watching Leicester Till I Die TV.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform.
Or ask your smart speaker
To play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Right, Chris.
All right, good evening, good day, good morning, good afternoon, good night, goodbye. Hello, wherever you are in the world. We're going to get straight on with it tonight because we've got a very special guest in, but he is very tight for time. He's in such demand. I thought I'll put my feet up for a few months, nothing to do, but these journalists, well, it's a busy time of year for them, isn't it? So let's bring my special guest in and say hello to, well, as you can see there, Ben from CBS. Good evening, Ben.
Hey, Chris, good evening. Great to be back.
Nice to have you back. Thank you very much for coming on. Obviously, not only a journalist, but a Leicester City fan as well.
Yeah, depressed Leicester City fan, unfortunately, because the season, of course, didn't go how we were all hoping. And now it has to be a case of picking ourselves up and trying to get back into the Premier League first time.
But do you think this very much reminds me, because I'm an old bugger, and I can remember when we went down to League One. And in a way, it was almost like a new start. We could draw a line and literally, like I say, start again. And I think it feels a little bit like that, especially with sort of the changes. Most of the squad are either going to be going or we're going to try and sell. We're going to bring a lot of new in, the new manager, of course, which we'll come on to. But I just think if we'd stayed up, it would have almost been like putting sort of a plaster over an open wound.
Well, I think financially, Leicester needed to stay up. That's the big thing. Yeah. And even though there are elements on the football side that clearly needed addressing, and I think that was apparent probably 18 months before relegation, which is why there was such a growing pressure on Brendan Rodgers. But if you actually look at the foundations of the club, there's a lot to like still. And as a consequence, back up in the Premier League makes Leicester a very attractive prospect still because of the stadium, because of the training facility, because of the culture at the club, because of the owners. And I think that everyone's going to have scrutiny on an owner when a football team goes down. But if you look at the very heartfelt letter that was written by Top via the club to the fan base, nobody can doubt that he and his family care, and nobody can take away from any Leicester City fan winning the Premier League, playing in the Champions League, getting to a semi-final against Roma in Europe, nearly making Champions League football in back-to-back seasons when Leicester felt like they had top four in their control come the final day of the season. So the memories are there, the culture is there, but obviously the challenge when you go down is it going to be a fresh start or is it going to be a rebuild? And if it's a rebuild, then that implies that there'll be a lot of outgoings. And if there's a lot of outgoings, it's very hard to predict Leicester's starting 11 come the first game of the season. And then when you add a new manager and all of that uncertainty and you realise how difficult it is to get out of the Championship, it is a big task for Leicester to come back up. And others might disagree with me on this front, but I have said many times that if you're, in inverted commas, too good to go down, and obviously nobody's too good to go down, but if you're only judging it on paper and you're saying Leicester's squad has too much quality to go down, then if and now when you go down, you're probably going to lose more. And that might be because you've got to offload the players off the wage bill. It might just be because there's a lot of demand. Whereas if you're Southampton they've still got assets people want. Tino Livramento might be off to Newcastle. Romeo Lavia has got a lot of interest. James Ward-Prowse might not stay. But it's a younger squad, and that's kind of why they went down. But then in the Championship, they'll have more continuity than Leicester. Leeds will be somewhere in the middle. But the worry for Leicester is not about can they sign the right people. It's about what are they going to be like if they lose more than just, let's say, Maddison and Barnes, because it could be Castagna, it could be Iheanacho. And as soon as it becomes 5 or 6, then Leicester's starting 11 will not look anywhere close to as strong as it did throughout the Premier League season. And that's the annoying thing about going down, that virtually every starting 11, when key players were fit, should have been a top half of the table Leicester. And yet they went down and the table doesn't lie.
Yeah, I don't think you can, like you say, I think it's a false saying to say, any team is too good to go down. If you go down, you deserve to go down. It's over 38 games. What I think is you can be too bad to stay up. And I think that might have been us this season. But, I look at Burnley and I don't think we're necessarily going to do a Burnley. But, when you look at what happened to them, new manager comes in, a complete clear out. And it's funny how these clubs go down, and we've done it ourselves when we've signed relegated players. These players are that bad, they get us relegated, and yet all these clubs come in sniffing after them. But I can't, literally can't do a prediction show. I always used to do a prediction show, obviously, before the season starts, but who knows, who's in the team to predict where we might be. But I think because of Enzo signing, it's got me excited. That and Coventry at home, which I called for the first game, those two things, they have actually got me excited. I don't think I would have been this excited if Parker or Gerrard would have come in.
Yeah, I think the analogy with Burnley and company and what he's built there in terms of a culture and an identity, and he's effectively turned them into a high energy, very easy on the eye, fashionable kind of football brand, which is not what we've associated with Burnley in the past. Yeah. And with Enzo Maresca, it's very similar, that he obviously inherits that Pep philosophy. So there's a real feeling that if given time and the right, I suppose, not just signings, but buy-in from the existing Leicester dressing room as well, then he can really make Leicester not only enjoyable to watch and get that improvement out of the players still at the football club, but also in addition to that, build something where if they do get back in the Premier League, they can maybe jump forwards 2 steps. Because obviously the thing when you go down is as soon as you return, the first thing you want to do is get to 40 points. And it's very strange for Leicester because you've got players that might be in the Championship this coming season that moved to the football club or were at the football club to play European football. And therefore, if Leicester in the Championship now did just take their current squad back up into the Premier League with exactly the same squad as they've got at the time we're recording this, they might still finish between 8th and 10th. A lot would ultimately just depend on, can there be that consistent goal scorer? Because we know that Vardy's output is diminishing. But you look at other players and you say, hang on a minute, with a few more goals and a few less errors and probably a number 1 goalkeeper, Leicester could possibly still be in that competition where we saw Spurs and Villa and Brighton. Yeah. And that, again, was the frustration of last season, that there were certain runs in the season where Leicester were world beaters. There was the streak just before the World Cup, and then there were the victories over Aston Villa and Tottenham. And that was Leicester that could score goals for fun. And then when you look at some of the key players like Maddison, who had a phenomenal first half of the season, not quite the same when he came back from his knee injury, and Harvey Barnes, who had a breakthrough season. And then on top of that, you start saying, well, if Ricardo's fit and gets back to a few years back, he's one of the best fullbacks in the Premier League. Timothy Castagna is a very dynamic fullback himself. So as long as the centre-back situation is sorted and there's a bit of leadership at the back and there's a goalkeeper that you trust, then all you're really lacking, because there's plenty of wide players, and I think Katey came in and did quite well. I think Christiansen as well was a decent signing and will be even better in the Championship. So it's just lacking that focal point. And this has been the problem since Vardy's output's gone down and his game time's limited. Iheanacho has never really been able to step up consistently, even though we've kind of seen a purple patch of form, and the same can be said for Patson Daka as well. So there's not much missing, ironically. And if I was a newly promoted team and I was offered Leicester's squad to stay up, I would take it all day long. And that's the, again, kind of heartbreak of relegation, that it wasn't just down to a lack of quality. In fact, it wasn't down to a lack of quality at all. It was probably down to not getting rid of Brendan Rodgers early enough, and then getting rid of Brendan Rodgers at the wrong time. So my perspective is you had two options with Rodgers. You either got rid of him much earlier, which was possibly the right decision, or you stuck with him, because I don't think Brendan Rodgers would have taken Leicester down. And then you get rid of him because you sort of accept that the project is over. But the manner in which they got rid of Rodgers without a clear plan was detrimental. And then complacency had already set in, and it was very hard for Dean Smith to turn things around. The fixtures, of course, weren't easy either. There's such fine margins. I mean, I'm sure Leicester fans are the same as me. You look back to Newcastle United in the 90-plus 7th minute, and that one opportunity, I think it was Castagne, wasn't it? And it was Pope's save. And okay, it was good height for the goalkeeper, but he struck it about as well as he could have done. And I don't know, 5 times out of 10, that might end up in the back of the net. It was a very good save. And sometimes the keeper will save that. Sometimes they'll be caught by surprise. But if that goes in, then Leicester's fate's in their control. And then they obviously went on to beat West Ham, and they would have stayed up. So it's such fine margins. And those fine margins create so many complications for the club now, because they have to rebuild in the Championship.
Definitely. I mean, I can't argue with anything you said there, certainly about Brendan. I don't want to make this about Brendan again, but I think he was the reason we went down. I just don't think he was. That's the one thing I do disagree, probably. I don't think he would keep us up. But, I mean, he had to go, whether that was, and yes, it was too late. I think we'll all agree with that. And I don't think he was the man, to be kept to bring us back up again. But when you look at sort of people that were being linked with us, did Enzo? I mean, Enzo for me got me, as I said earlier, more excited than had it been a Parker or had it been a Gerrard. They were very much names that I can see Enzo building a long-term project here.
It's always a bit of a difficult one, because why are people excited about Enzo? Ultimately, because they're excited about Pep and Manchester City, and he's come off the back of a season where they've won the treble. So quite clearly, he wouldn't have been in that position unless he learned from Pep and shared the same philosophy. So when people are excited about the manager, they're actually excited about what they've seen at Manchester City. And I think it's logical that there will be the same philosophy. And I suppose the only question mark is just, can Enzo, first of all, step up, and second of all, adapt to the Championship? Because if Pep Guardiola managed Leicester City, even in those final games of the season, he wouldn't have been able to get Leicester City playing like Manchester City overnight. You have to ultimately adapt and work with what you've got. And what he's got now might not be what he has by the time Leicester kick off the season against Coventry. So if it is a Maddison-less Leicester, a Barnes-less Leicester, a Castagne-less Leicester, and so on, then he'll have to work out what's necessary and how he can get the fan base excited and the players enthused, but also how he can realistically just get promotion. And if you come out of the Championship and you go up playing ugly, it doesn't really matter. It's just about getting back up there. And then obviously you hope you get more budget, you get more scope to start over a season or two to bring in what you need. So I hope Leicester are patient, both the fan base and the ownership group. I'm sure they will be. And if Leicester can get up first time, they'll be in a very strong position, and the season will kind of be, I wouldn't want to say long forgotten, because it's actually quite fun when you challenge or win a championship in the Championship. It can be really exciting. You can have confidence.
Hopefully, and again, I'm going back to my League One days, it'll be nice to see us winning games again. But, I mean, we're going to come on very quickly, I was a little constrained for time, about some of the players we've been linked with. But do we need to be linked with that, Ellie? Because we've got a lot of young prospects that, and you see some of the, the big clubs that have these young prospects that just disappear because they haven't got the opportunities. The likes of Baybrook and Alves, they've surely now we don't necessarily need to go and buy because we have got those really good prospects in the youth team.
There's youth prospects, of course. It's very difficult for a youth prospect to necessarily walk into the Championship. So I think that what Enzo will be looking for is players that are kind of transitional, ones that either are Premier League quality that are happy to drop down in order to come back up, or alternatively specialist players that may know when they're signed that they're there to get Leicester up. And then you have to wait and see what happens after that. So, for example, Connor Cody, who's been linked with Leicester, and there is a very realistic possibility that that one comes off, could be the type of player that ultimately goes down and then still has a role to play if you then get up. And the situation at the moment is that Wolves actually rejected Leicester's initial bid for Connor Cody, but the Leicester side, when I talk to sources, are adamant that they'll be back. So there's still a confidence that that deal can get done purely because Wolves are quite happy to let the player leave. So this is Leicester moving for experience. Again, he falls into that category of a player that, yes, he'll drop down, but if you go back up, he can still have a role to play. So that's the type of signing that I think Leicester fans can be very enthused by. And it's the same really for Suter, who obviously was signed earlier, but is exactly that kind of mould where he's comfortable in the Championship and now has Premier League experience as well. And if you can get that sort of in-between player and you get 6 or 7 of them and you keep on to a couple of your stars, then Leicester's squad is going to look very strong heading into the new season.
I'm really excited. Sorry, I'm really excited by Connor Cody, to be honest with you. I think he was it wasn't so long ago. He was an England starter, but yeah, like you say, they have they have rejected our first offer, but like you say, they should be going back in for him. But one that it's been reported, basically almost a done deal. No, I don't know if this is true, and I suppose we always hope that Enzo would go back to Man City and pick up a few of their younger prospects. This guy had a season last season, not a bad season with Middlesbrough, and like I said, the rumours are, and it is one area that has caused us concern, isn't it, the goalkeeper? And again, another signing. I'd like to see this go through.
Yeah, this one is very real as well. And as you say, Enzo knows the player well. It's Zach Steffen, and he will be somebody that could be quite useful in the Championship. I'm not quite as sold because I've watched quite a lot of him. And I think that the biggest concern is just Leicester need a number one goalkeeper for the long term. And he's the right age and profile, but ultimately has not had the consistency of game time when he's been at Man City. And he's had these loan spells where he's done very well, I think it's fair to say, but you're getting a Championship goalkeeper. And then I start looking at Iverson and I think he did all right. Not brilliant, but he did better than Ward. And even Ward was very, very dodgy. And then suddenly had a string of clean sheets just before the World Cup. And then in the second half of the season, predominantly lost his place. So is Steffen better than those two, equivalent to those two? It's so hard to tell because you don't really even know what Iverson will be like in the Championship. But a good age and a good profile and a high ceiling of improvement. And I think he played virtually every game when he was on loan.
44, I think he played for Middlesbrough, yeah.
And the reason why he went there was because it's been told quite clearly to Steffen that if he's to push for a place in the 2026 World Cup squad, he needs to play more regularly. So that's why he went there. He's played, as you say, over 40 games. And I do think that this would be a smart signing, but it doesn't sort of strike me necessarily as the type of definite number one. Maybe Leicester fans will put him there. And obviously for a goalkeeper, he's still reasonably young. I think he's 28. Yeah. So you could argue that you're going to get 6, 7, 8 years if he does well, because goalkeepers tend to get old more around 36, 37 than 31, 32. But again, it doesn't quite excite me purely because my head can't get out of seeing Leicester in the Premier League. So anyone that comes into the Championship, I think, great. Of course, they'll work in the Championship. But then I think about next season. And would I want to head into a Premier League season with Zach Steffen as my number one goalkeeper? I'm actually not so sure. So this one could well come off. And it is the case that Leicester need a reliable goalkeeper. But we're going to have to wait and see whether that's Steffen or Iverson or Ward. And obviously, if you're Steffen, you're probably not going to go to Leicester unless you genuinely feel that you are going to start as the number one. Exactly. Why is he going to move from Middlesbrough if he can't go back there or go back to Manchester City where he's not going to get any game time? But why would he possibly go to Leicester if they're telling him you may actually...
I don't think he would come to us unless there was some sort of guarantee that he was going to start as number one. Talking about Premier League player, you say you can't get your head off this not being Premier League. Although this guy was on loan, was it Italy last season? I'm not sure. Harry Winks from Spurs. Is that someone? I mean, again, it's been quite heavily linked that we are in discussions with him.
Yeah, Leicester have looked at Harry Winks. Leeds have looked at Harry Winks as well, and I think that there is a opportunity in the market. That's for sure, purely because there's a deal there to be had, and I think that Winks is in all likelihood surplus to requirements at Tottenham. I think last summer he perhaps wasn't, but now I think that he's not going to necessarily be the right fit or have enough quality for Ange Postecoglou. Now, from Leicester's point of view, I think they could do a deal here at a relatively decent rate. Negotiations are underway. He's 27 years of age, and I don't think that there's a player preference at this point between Leeds and Leicester. But I do think that Leicester are a bit further along as far as the negotiations are concerned. And the reason why there's a deal there to be had is because Winks has only got a year left on his Tottenham deal. So Ange Postecoglou is absolutely fine with him leaving. And I think the pros are he's quite intelligent. He's quite calm on the ball. And he has that tenacity and energy to be up for the fight of getting out of the Championship. The downside is that he's a little bit injury prone. So Leicester will need to be sure that he's fully fit and that he's not in and out the side with little niggles. And obviously the Championship can be quite a fast and furious and physical league. So you need to do a bit of due diligence there. I wouldn't say that he's had the best of seasons as a consequence of injury. And I would also say that he needs a little bit of man management. So it can be one of those where it's quite low risk because with only a year on the contract, it won't be a big fee and Spurs want to let him go. And then if Enzo can end up getting the best out of the player, he can still have a high ceiling of improvement. And that's ultimately why Leicester...
This is it though, isn't it? Is that, I mean, I remember Tony Katey was written off in Malaysia. He came back and Martin O'Neill got an excellent couple of seasons out of him. But that leads me on. And Mike is saying it's a swap deal and it's no way... I've read that it's completely separate and isn't even affecting the negotiations for Matt. My slide hasn't worked. There we go. No, it's still not working. Have I frozen?
No, you're still there.
No? Right. Well, apparently my next slide, which should have come up, for some reason hasn't come up. I don't know what's going on here. But Maddison to Spurs. And I'm looking at the time and realise I've got to let you go after this one. But that's a surprise that he's gone. He obviously doesn't want to win anything for the rest of his career. Did I say that out loud?
I don't know whether we're allowed to say that. I mean, remember, Tottenham did beat Leicester in a League Cup final to win a trophy. So I'm sure
that was last century.
You have to remember that. But you're right. I mean, obviously, Leicester have won a lot more than Tottenham in recent years.
Yes.
But look, Maddison was always going to leave Leicester, whether they stayed up or whether they went down under these circumstances. Clearly, it might have been different if Leicester had qualified for Europe or something. Maddison's got great respect for Leicester. He has enjoyed his time here. He's improved, I think, on and off the field. And he's managed to kind of turn that sort of flair and swagger-like demeanour when he first joined into something much more controlled and intelligent, but still with the same dynamism and quality. And this is why he's drawn attention. And Tottenham and Newcastle have been looking at Maddison for a year. And obviously Newcastle bid for Maddison a year ago at 40 million. And at the time, Brendan Rodgers said it wouldn't even get you one of his 2 feet. Yeah. And Leicester were, in inverted commas, looking for 65 million, but they really didn't think he was for sale and they were trying to price him out of the market. Flash forwards and Leicester are still looking for somewhere close to 60 million, but they may bend a little bit on structure. So it may not be 60 million in terms of the guaranteed fee. And top starting position is under 50 million. And when they bid, which could well be this week, they'll be looking for somewhere 35 to 45, I would have thought, in terms of a starting point. And then the overall package might end up being 40 plus 5, 40 plus 10 to test Leicester's resolve. And then we have to wait and see whether Leicester remain bullish. Obviously, from Leicester's point of view, they'll want to know whether they are or aren't starting the season with Maddison. So it's not a case of dragging it out during the window. I think they'll want the situation resolved very quickly. And I seem to recall as well, and apologies if I'm wrong on this, but I think Maddison's partner's about to give birth to twins, if I'm right. So if that's correct, then he's looking to settle himself as well, because the last thing that he'll want to do is not know where he's living, not know where they're basically going to be bringing 2 babies into the world. So apologies if I'm actually wrong on that. I'm sure that I saw that his partner was...
I'm not sure whether they've popped out yet or not, to be honest with you, but no, it's weird. And apparently Levy is getting involved, so they want it finishing.
Well, he always gets involved as well. I mean, Levy always gets involved. And that's just the nature of the fact that Spurs do not have a director of football. They do not have a sort of historical team in place. And that's the big thing for Spurs, that they've gone from Conte ball to Postecoglou ball via 2 interims. And Scott Munn, who's the sort of lead football person at the moment, is brand new. And then when a director of football comes in, he'll almost become more like a general manager. Whereas Fabio Paratici was both a general manager and a director of football. So Spurs will have 2 people plus Postecoglou. They're all new. So, of course, Levy's having to step in. So the expectation with this deal is that it will happen reasonably quickly, providing, of course, a fee can be agreed. I don't think Spurs will want to pay 55 million or more. And then the other thing just to look out for is whether or not Newcastle make a bid. At this stage, the indication is no. Spurs might have a bit of a clear path. And the reason for that is solely because they've just brought in Tonali, who's more of a number 8 or defensive-minded midfielder. And I think that's made Newcastle pivot, even though they were quite aggressive on Maddison historically. And then I would just keep half an eye. There's nothing concrete at the moment. There's nothing that's started. But I would just keep a sort of 1% eye, if you like, on Manchester United. And the only reason I say that is because if they don't get Mount, having put 50 plus 5 on the table, and they want someone similar to Mount, and some sources are saying Caicedo, but that's more games because Chelsea want Caicedo. If that falls through with Mount, you've got Maddison available at probably maximum 55 million, which is what Manchester United put on the table for Mount. It wouldn't surprise me if they take a look. So I think Spurs are the front runners. Spurs are the favourites. Maddison's open to the move. So everything's looking quite simple at the moment, but it's the transfer window. It's never completely simple. So if there is an unexpected twist, I would just keep that one eye. I don't even want to call it interest at this point, but I would just keep an eye on Manchester United if Mount falls through. But as things stand, in Spurs' hands.
According to all sort of the other North London football fans in red, that plastered a load of pictures all over the internet of Maddison in an Arsenal shirt, they've gone pretty quiet on it. Sorry, Miss Molina, who's just come in as a big Arsenal fan. Had to get that dig in. Ben, look, I appreciate the time. You've got to go. I really do. Thank you for coming on at, say, what is a very, very busy time for you. We'll speak again soon, hopefully, maybe before the season starts, and fingers crossed that it's going to be a good one for us.
Yeah, pleasure coming on. Keep up the good work and good luck to Leicester ahead of the new season. All the best, everyone.
All the best, Ben. Take care. Bye-bye. Bye-bye. Thanks so much to Ben. He has to go. He's literally on another show now at 8:30, so that's why I couldn't get through too many questions. And he doesn't give sort of quick answers, but he gives very detailed, very interesting answers. So, I mean, Maddison... I've got to say, look, if these players want to go, then just let them go. I don't really want anybody that's going to be there that doesn't want to play. Now, if this is going to be like, Christensen's come out and said, yeah, I want to stay. I want to fight. Brilliant. That I'm happy. If FaZe comes around and says, look, my coach who originally was linked was said that he wouldn't get in the national team if he was playing in the championship. So I could understand him wanting to go away. Fine, we're going to need people that want to be at the club. And if they don't, they don't. And also, like every other club that's been relegated, we are going to have a lot of players that we can't afford to keep because of the wages that we're on. If we don't, if we need the money, let's sell what we can. Now, Vestergaard is an interesting one because. Well, let me just sort of go this back to Maddison because he's still talking about this in the chat. So let's address this with the how much is it going to be? Look, we lost out with Youri Tielemans. We didn't sell him on the hope that we would get back into Europe the last season and that he might be one of the key players. And obviously, if Tielemans was on form, he would have been. But we didn't sell him. And he didn't sign a new contract. Now, nobody has a go about Maguire, but when he went, and I've said this so many times, and I heard this from Rob Tanner. He signed a contract knowing that he was going to be leaving, but knowing that then Leicester would get some money. See, that's what peed me off about Tielemans. Is he could have done that. He could have signed a contract, so at least we got maybe 10 million or something for him, a nominal fee. But with Tielemans, it was all about him. So I'm glad he's fucked off. Let him go and play Champions League football with Aston Villa, that he wants Champions League football. Whoops, of course, they're not in the Champions League. How did that one work out, Youri? But with Maddison, yes, he's played in the Championship, obviously, at Norwich. He's better than the Championship, we know that. And yes, I've called him a show pony, but he's a fantastic player. And he does wear his heart on the sleeve and he does give his all for the club, sometimes too much in a way. But if we were to say to Tottenham, look, this is Daniel Levy we're dealing with here. I'm surprised he wants to go to Tottenham because we've won more in the last 9 seasons than Tottenham have. There's a couple of seasons they weren't even in Europe, and when one season they did get into Europe, they got kicked out. But look, it looks like it's going to be Tottenham. I don't know what Arsenal are playing at. All these pictures of our players with their shirts on, and they don't sign anybody. I think Alan Smith was the last one that they signed from us. My God. But if we say, right, okay, we're going to get 40 million for him, so let's ask 40 million. Daniel Levy's going to come in and offer 30. So let's ask 60. It's all negotiation. Let's ask 60, and then Daniel Levy may come in and say, all right, 40, 45, and maybe I'll give you some add-ons. So it is all about negotiating. I agree with you, Mike, there. I agree with you. So, yeah, it's... who cares how much we get for him as long as we get something for him? Because if we keep him another season, there's no way he's going to sign a contract even to maybe get us some money now that we've been relegated. So he is going, and I hope it works. Well, I hope it's sooner rather than later. But that's what I think. If we get 40 million, so be it. Let's be honest with you, we are in the Championship. You immediately wiping 10, 15 million pound off a player's value just by getting relegated. Just going back to a few points that were made. Scott says rumours are that Vardy could be allowed to go on a free transfer. Look, if he does, he does, and he goes with all my best. He really does. There's nothing I would moan about with Vardy. He's given 110%. It's not his fault that we've had 2 managers, one in Puel, one in Rodgers, that don't know how to play him, despite what Rodgers said. When he didn't know how to play him because it wasn't the way he wanted to, he stopped doing it. So look, if I I would hope that if he's going to go, that he goes to Sheffield Wednesday because it's his boyhood club. I'd love to see him maybe have one last season there. He's got a year left. He could still be a amazing problem for Championship defences. So, and Enzo's come out and said he wants him. So, if Enzo wants him, do you think if they get 35 million for Ndidi, they might try to keep hold of Barnes? I think Barnes is gone as well, to be honest with you. Barnes on the cusp of the England team. Why would you want to play in the Championship? In fairness, he's not a Leicester lad. And I say, despite what we say about all these players, it is just a job to them. So if Barnes, again, he's a sellable asset, and we've got to look at. If we sell Barnes for, let's say, 35 million, let's say, and I think Barnes is more saleable than Ndidi, although I wouldn't want to keep Ndidi, I'd let him go, but I think he's only got a year left anyway, but to my mind, he's past his best and is a penalty waiting to happen. But if we can get 30 million for Barnes, sell him, because we could get 2 probably Championship players for that money. Rennie said, do you want to keep Daka or Nacho? I'd like to keep them both. Again, I think apparently what's he called? The ref abuser, Mourinho. He wants them both, apparently. Not greedy. And look, if Iheanacho wanted to go, we know how good he can be. Again, if we've got a manager that plays him right. And everybody's been saying, Daka's rubbish, Daka's rubbish. Daka hasn't had the fucking chance to play. Everybody that's saying Daka's rubbish 2-3 seasons ago was saying exactly the same about Iheanacho. And we know when he was played in that 2 with Vardy, he was the top goal scorer. And it worked, but Rodgers was so far up his own fucking arse that he didn't play them as a 2 up front. So, he has every right to say, look, I've been pissed off here. I've been totally and utterly pissed off. I'm going. And I couldn't blame him. I couldn't blame him at all. And Daka, I think, look, we're going to need a replacement for Vardy. Vardy is not going to play 2 games a week, which is virtually what it's going to be, depending on how well we do in the Cups. He's not going to be able to do that in the Championship season. So we do need another striker of his ability, as in speed, etc. So I think Daka will run rings around a couple of those Championship defences. But yeah, as you say, Terry, how many players did Rodgers play out of position? Quite a lot, as it happens. Quite a lot. I don't know why I can't get Maddison up. Right, that should be Connor Cody. Now, this is Ryan Gillis, who is another Wolves player who we have been linked with. And a lot of these now are links. Those that we've just been discussing, because he wasn't with us long, I wanted to discuss with Ben early on, because there was that more likely to happen. But this is another guy we've been linked with from Wolves. Don't know whether Wolves will let him go or not, because he's a hot prospect. So, they may want to keep hold of him, but we will see. This guy now, apparently he is really... Well, he's on the virtual point of signing. If he hasn't signed already, he's coming over from FC Burnham in Thailand. He is like Thailand's top player, and he is going to sign for us. And it makes, that's the market that our owners are in. I'm sure they've got people that are out there to look for, to look at people. So I'm looking forward to that. This guy I don't know an awful lot about, midfielder, but Tanaka. He does sound a bit like a James Bond villain here. Ayo Tanaka. A-O dot Tanaka. No, it doesn't work as well as the advert, does it? But yeah, he is linked with us as well. And of course, these are the players that are going out. Iheanacho and Daka, I can't see, to be honest with you, both of them going, because that would only leave us with Vardy and the player, and I've forgotten the guy's name who's been out on loan, the striker that keeps going out on loan. And to be honest with you, if he was he's had about 4 or 5 loans. He hasn't really, I don't think, impressed enough. So I do think that not both of them. Hurst, that's it. Thank you, Terry. I knew if I spoke long enough, somebody would come in. Terry, you're a lifesaver, mate. Hurst, and not Jeff. George, thank you, Mike. I think his that particular bird has flown. I think if he was going to be given a chance, he would have been given it. When you look at who has come through, Kieran Dewsbury, Luke Thomas, and when you see who's been on the benches, Baybrook, Alves, etc., and yet we're still getting. I could face it. What do I know? I don't think we will. Indeed, he off to Celtic. Take him, Brendan. Take him. We'll give him you on a free. I mean, when we look at this, I'm not going to turn this into a Brendan rant again, although probably will do. You don't have to have a look and say, well, Brendan is the guy that got us relegated, because he was. I don't put this on Dean Smith at all. Brendan is the guy who got us relegated. We've also got to look to the players. He turned Youri Tielemans from a £70 million player into probably a 20 million if we had actually managed to get anything for him. James Maddison from an 80-odd, £90 million player into a £40 million player. He's actually made players worse. And that's what hurts. So it's not only cost us with the cost of getting relegated, it's cost us with what we can sell players for, because he's made players worse. How long ago was Ndidi being linked with Man United? I remember at the end of his first season, Man United, we want this guy. We want him. Again, like with Youri Tielemans, clubs aren't lining up for him. I'm sorry, I would have sooner have kept Mendy and let him go. But obviously, we've got another year on him. But Dennis Pratt to Torino, look, again, do you know what? I wish him well. Again, he's been absolutely shat on by the Bell End. I haven't played it for a while. Should we do it? And I think why shouldn't we? Why shouldn't we? Here we go.
Bell End.
There we go. I feel so much better when I play that. He actually said, I want to stop and fight for my place. Let's give him a chance, Brendan. You brought him on for 10 minutes here, 10 minutes there. Wanker. Pratt, okay, maybe he wasn't as good as we thought, but he was being played on the wing, and he's not a winger. But I wish him all the best. I don't blame that he wants to go. Why wouldn't he want to go? Leicester have treated him like shit. Like Soyuncu when he left. He said, if I'd been offered another contract, why would I have stayed the way I was treated? And it's quite true. It is quite true. If you haven't seen my video, Life's a Pitch, about Brendan, by the way, do check it out. It's still on the YouTube channel. It's under the pick. But no, Dennis Pratt, I think, will go, and I've got to say good luck to him. Justin, now this was a Talk Sport one, and it does get me peed off a little bit when people and I guess it's social media, I shouldn't be surprised, but one of the rules of the Facebook group is that if you don't agree with something I post, A, don't blame me, because I'm not making these rumours up, but B, if you don't agree with it, either ignore it or just move on. Just move on. Don't go, that's come from Talk Sport. They're shite. Talk shite. Talk Sport are owned by Sky Sports. So if it was on Sky Sports, you'd probably turn around and go, yeah, Fair point. I can see that. Yeah, I understand that. But because it's talked, although they're owned by the same people, they're using the same sources. And just be honest with you, if that's all you're going to put in the chats, it shows you up to be the missing link that most of you probably are. Not on here. I mean, they're on about Facebook. Add something to the conversation. And if you can't add something to the conversation, fuck off as far as I'm concerned. I think I want to keep him, Danilo. I really, really do. I agree, Rennie. But again, he's a sellable asset, and that's what we've got to think. But he is on a longer contract, so he could actually stay. And of course, he has played at that level before, but he must be a bit peed off. He must look at it and go, I left Luton for this lot. They're up there, we're down here. But I think he'll stay. I do think he'll stay. And that was the last one. But the other one I wanted to speak about very, very briefly, and Brad's not here, so I can speak about him. And that's Vestergaard, because I read somewhere, and I think it was in the I think it was in the was it Mercury or oh no, it was on the BBC. And Matt Piper, the ex-player and Radio Leicester co-commentator, said Foxes must give Vestergaard golden handshake to leave. Why should he leave? He didn't want to leave in January because his wife was having a baby. 100% understand that. I have no fault with him on that. Why would he move when his wife's about to give birth? As we said about Maddison earlier, he wants to get it sorted, hopefully, so that he can settle in when his girlfriend gives twins to the world. But Vestergaard, he was pursued by Brendan for 2 seasons. So he must have thought, well, this guy wants me, so I'll come. And then when he came, he was never played. And when he was out of position. It wasn't in the formation that suited him. So he's had a bit of a bad press. I do feel sorry for the guy. Of course he's going to be peed off. And why should he leave? If he's on a good wage, why should he leave? There's no obligation for him to leave. He's been the one that's been dealt the shit hand because he came to play football. So, but yeah, it might be a factor of, well, let's just pay him off. Let's move him out and get him off the wage bill. Maybe we should do that with a few. I don't know. But just yet, latest news. So Spurs in advanced talks to sign Maddison. That's on Sky / TalkSport because of the same company. And The Athletic, Wolves turned down opening bid from Leicester for Connor Cody. But the Championship club are expected to return with a new bid with the player keen on regular football. So, I love Connor Cody. Wolves obviously don't want him. Everton don't want him. I think he'd be a good signing for us. Imagine him and Faze and Suter interchanging. Because, as I say, you're going to actually need a bigger squad because we're going to be playing 46 games, not 38, 46. Plus, we're playing straight after because we're in the first round of the Carabao Cup. So there's a lot more games, there's a lot more players we are going to need. Cody, get him in for me. Get him in. It's good, and I hope that we're not going to be leaving it all till the end of the season and maybe buying 1 or 2 before. We've got 110 million that we earned last season from the Premier League. Of course, we don't get the parachutes this season. The parachutes won't come into effect till next season if we stay down. If we come back up, then we don't get them at all. But this season, we get the money that we earned last season, which is allegedly is about 110 million. How much of that will be given for transfers? I don't know. But hopefully a good chunk of it. I'm excited. Enzo, yes. I wouldn't be this excited if I know, as Ben quite rightly said there, we are this excited because he's Pep's number 2. I don't know if it's tomorrow, Rennie, but I think he is going to go. But look, I just the fact that he could have stayed at Man City. Okay, he could have stayed there and had a really good season next season, because I think Man City will probably, I know they've lost a couple of players, but I still think they're going to be number one. Arsenal aren't going to challenge, I don't think, because every player they go after they don't get. So I'm excited that he wanted to come here. And of course, the young players that he knows, because he was looking after as well the under-21s, which won the Premier B league last season. So I think, Scott, any manager, and the manager's got to go, and he's new, right? So he's not going to know exactly what's probably needed. So he's going to have to probably be told by John Rudkin and some of the coaches what players we will need. He will then know, and he'll look at it and go, right, oh shit, I haven't got enough central defenders, so I'll probably need another one to cover that. Guys, central defenders. And then I think the transfer panel will go off under Martin Glover. You're right, central defenders, who can we get? And as a manager, he will have his recommendations. Of course he will. But it's whether we can afford him, whether we can get him, who else is coming in for them. You know, we are at the end of the day a championship club. People are going to look at us and go, are Leicester on the decline? No disrespect to Blackburn Rovers. Look what happened to them, and they've still not come back yet. How long did it take? So you've got all this to contend with. So, but on the other hand, this is Leicester. We've got a huge training facility, new stadium. If we can get back up, those plans, I think, for the new stadium will come back online. Martin Glover, yes, he will have a big say in it. He wasn't here last summer. He's here this summer. That's why he's in to have. But it can't just be down to Martin Glover. It can't just be down to Enzo. It's got to be a combination of them all coming out with the best players, because what Enzo might want, we can't afford. Or what Martin Glover or John Rudkin come along and go, this is, we think, a good signing. Enzo might go, oh, no, he's not. He doesn't fit into the way I want to play. And look, Yannick Vestergaard looked at him and gone, okay, 15 million, we need a central defender, is available. Brendan Rodgers really wants him, but he wasn't the right player for the way that Brendan Rodgers played. So let's get players in that Enzo wants, because if Enzo doesn't want them, and the players are being forced on him, he isn't going to play them, and we're going to be absolutely up the shit. Ricky P, he's been linked with the move back. Everybody's been linked with the move away. As it always are with Leicester, even when we're in the Premier League, we're going to start the season with a five-a-side team. But look, thanks a lot to Ben for coming on. I really do appreciate it. He is so very, very busy. And, of course, they're all waiting on the Man United sale to see whether that goes ahead or not. But thank you to Ben for coming on, sports reporter for CBS, as you can see there. We'll be back with another City chat soon. It is a bit of a quiet period, so I'm trying to do less and actually get some of my life back, so which is pretty impossible in a transfer window when you've just been relegated. Thanks to everybody else, everybody that was in the chat. Thank you to Scott and James and Mike and the mods for coming in and modding for me. Really do appreciate it. And don't forget, if you want to, you can become a member. It's £1.99 a calendar month. There's a link in the YouTube underneath. Just click on that and it will tell you what you get. And that includes member-only shows next season. So that's just $1.99. Click on that. And you can follow us on all our social medias. LTiD TV or Leicester Till I Die, one of the two. Just search them both and they'll come up on all the main social medias and podcast platforms as well. But remember, don't forget this.
The Premier League? That's So, last season, it's all about the championship here on LTiD TV.
Now that's what I call football.
You hit the right spot.
Premier League. What the hell is that? Okay, we're going to be back. Thank you so very much. Take care, guys. Enjoy the summer. The sun's coming back, I believe, later on in the week. Enjoy yourself. This has been LTiD TV. I've been Chris. This is Arnie. Good night.
Thanks for watching. These videos are tremendous. You better like them too, or I'll be back.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network. TalkSport. Powered by fans.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.